Okay, my coffee is starting to go cold, but it's okay. So it's 9:12. Thank you for all of the comments. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments. 8K output, YouTube. Very nice, very nice. Cool, so I'm gonna go onto the first question now, which was something that came up this week. And it was all to do with how do you make decisions between different business options? So one of the things which comes up quite a lot is that and I've been there, most people have a job. I don't know what the percentage actually is for people that work for themselves, but most people work in some sort of employment. One of the things which has actually become more and more prevalent in the past maybe 10 years, when I guess we started to have The Apprentice in the UK, but we also had, what do we have? We have Dragon's Den and different things. Entrepreneurship kind of became cool at some point, and that was true kind of around the world. But actually a lot of people have some sort of burning desire to maybe consider starting a business or launching a product or whichever. And I think it's a great option because what it can do was that a lot of people are very creative and they want to feel like fulfillment and actually that they're building something. And the truth is in most jobs that doesn't always happen. You can be working away, but almost if you feel like you're just working for someone else and you're not really achieving anything, that it doesn't always motivate you to get out of bed every day. So there's a lot of people who do consider kind of starting their own business. But the truth is as well, it's probably a lot harder than a lot of people think. The basics of which to do well is what I cover in the roadmap. And you can learn it, and that's the whole point of the course. But it's still your gut feel on if you should do it, what option should you take, and different options. So what I'm going to draw out is 3 different options that someone I spoke to this week had. And then they were trying to decide what do they do, which options do they chase. So the first one for a lot of people is a job. Then we had option 1 and then option 2. So I'm just going to pick 2 random options for the idea. And then the idea is that obviously you apply it to yourself. So the job could be, to be honest, it can be whatever you want. And I'm going to say option 1 is to invest in property. And this is something that a lot of people want to do now. And there's lots of different ways you can do it, but I'm going to do. And then the other one, I'm just going to call it product. When I say product, it could be coffee, it could be handbags, it could be business courses, it could be anything, but I'm talking about physical goods, not services. So I'm going to call that product. Okay. So next, the things that you always have to consider when you're looking at what do you do and actually do you start a business, and then if so, which business do you start? Because that can also be part of the problem. There's 3 main things that I think you want to look at. First one is risk. Then there's opportunity size. And then last but not least, is competition. So I'm going to start with the job first, and I'm hopefully going to try and explain why I think each of these is important. And the idea is that when talking it through, if you've got any questions, drop them in the comment. But it's that kind of thing of the whole point of this is just to spark that idea of, I didn't think of that. So in terms of a job, actually, I'm just going to switch back to this pen. So in terms of taking a job, someone else is actually taking the risk for you, as in, you probably work for a business that you're not kind of founding yourself. And then worst case, if it doesn't work out, you can always get another job. So I think risk with taking a job is low. Opportunity size, and this is in terms of market size, but likewise, what potential benefit could you get from it? By its very nature, because you're working for someone else, probably in someone else's machine, it's quite low. So I can't imagine, although you do still get some very well-paid jobs, there's not a huge amount of them. So actually, I'd also say that the opportunity size is low. I'm going to use pound coin signs as I kind of go across. But then competition, and when I say competition, yes, I guess there is competition for the same jobs, which is true. But I'm going to talk about actually just, I still think it's a hell of a lot easier to get a job and work. I reckon 20, 30 times easier than it is to do it yourself. So I'm not going to say that competition for jobs is also low. I know that at the moment there is actually a very in-demand job market, actually, which is great. There's a lot of people in work at the moment, even post-COVID. But in the purely terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of deciding what to do, a job is kind of a low risk, low reward angle. And actually, if it doesn't work out, you haven't lost anything. You can just get another job. Next, I'm going to jump into property. And then the idea is that it doesn't matter if it's property or actually something else. It's just the idea to think about the topic, if that makes sense. But in terms of property, risk, because you probably have to put a lot of money down for deposits and different stuff, I'd actually say the risk is quite high. But then there's also other things as well. Like, for instance, I read a book recently and it talked about how a property entrepreneur, they bought a plot of land, they invested a lot of money into it, and they found something hidden underground, which basically just torpedoed the whole project. But actually, take that as it is, I'm going to say the risk actually is quite high. And that's purely because of, you might have to put your life savings or actually remortgage your house to do it. The opportunity size is also very high. So for instance, properties cost a lot of money, but likewise they all can sell for a lot of money. And likewise, a lot of people do renovations. So they might buy a property, do it up and then sell it, in which case they could make 20, 30 grand in a few months, which is a lot better than you would ever get selling coffee, etc. So I'm also going to say opportunity size is £3 notes, coin things, just because there's a big opportunity there. Competition is interesting for this purely because there are actually a lot of people who do property development. And if you Google it online or you go onto Instagram and stuff, you'll see lots of people, and I know lots of people that actually do it. So competition is relatively high, but actually there's a huge market out there. As in we have in the UK 70, 80 million people. So actually I'm going to say medium on this one. So what you're then looking at is actually, if you wanted to go into property, for one, do you have the expertise to do it? Or if you don't, do you have the ability to learn the expertise to do it? Can you afford to take the risk? Because likewise, if you had a few million quid in the bank that actually you could invest $500,000 without really mattering if you lose it or not, that might sway the risk. And then actually it's not hugely kind of competitive just because the market is so big and you can go direct to customer. In terms of launching the product business, I actually think that this is one of the areas that a lot of people underestimate how difficult it is. So in terms of risk, it depends what you want to sell. I'm going to say actually fashion stuff. So I'm going to say handbags just as a prime example. What is the risk? So actually the risk would be, you would have to buy stock, which is obviously massively cost intensive, because if you go to a manufacturer and actually say, look, I've got this new design of handbag, I need 1,000, they'll tell you about minimum order quantities, and you might have to put down £20,000 and probably wait 6 months at least. And that's before you even start to advertise the product, market the product, get any retail space, etc. So actually the risk is also pretty high. But the other thing that I wanted to kind of point out is that for any product-based business, within reason, there's also a supply chain risk. So you might have a business which might rely on a particular supplier in Italy that does your stuff, and that might be a brilliant business. But if they go out of business, or they go bust, or they change their decision making, or they just don't want to work with you, or whichever, your whole business that you've spent years kind of building could be dead in the water. And a lot of people don't think about supply chain risk. But then the other side to it as well is that you'll always get squeezed on margin. So the more layers that you have in your supply chain in terms of raw material through to actually selling it to a customer, the more difficult a business it's going to be, because there's more areas that you're going to get squeezed. But actually, this is often more difficult than you might think. Opportunity size, again, I'm going to pick handbags. Yes, I guess you've got a global market that if you are Fendi or Hermes or Mulberry or whoever, yeah, there's a big market out there. So I'm going to go high again on that one. But again, the actual competition is extremely high. because you're also going up against people with very, very, very deep pockets, established supply chains, marketing campaigns, everything, that if you actually wanted to go into a product-based business and go head to head against something which is well established, you have to make sure that you have a tip-top product, which ideally you own the intellectual property on, that nobody else can copy. It has to be uniquely yours. Then actually that's going to reduce your risk, but always be conscious of supply chain. Part of the option with property or any business, if you can go direct to consumer, so you don't have to go via a retailer or via anyone else, it's really valuable to be able to kind of do that. Or you can just get a job. And it's these kind of things that when you're trying to weigh up different options about starting a new business and trying to decide what to do, people often forget about supply chain. And then the big thing again on competition is that you've got to ask yourself, and you've got to also be honest, why do you think you can do whatever it is better than anyone else in the world? And it rarely does, and it should be anyone else in the world, unless you want to start like a local bakery. Purely because with the internet now and live streaming and different things, you have to be 100% confident in your offer. That for me, I solve problems very quickly, but I also understand small businesses and the challenges they face. And I've kind of been through that career that I spotted a gap that nobody had ever actually brought that together in a business education format, but then kind of thought through, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it easy? How do we make it accessible for people that don't like to read? And really trying to think it through. So for me with the Roadmap MBA, this is a 10-year thing that I'm going to try and keep building on. But I genuinely do think that I can do it better than anyone else. That's why I've kind of jumped into it head first. But you should do the same. You want to have complete kind of confidence in what you do, why it's important, and also how you can kind of conquer the world doing it. Cool. I'm just going to catch up on some of the comments. Do I freelance? Yes, I do. I do consultancy, which is the same thing. So yes, companies basically hire me to do stuff. And then being honest, as part of my kind of business model is that if you go on my website under Steve or consultancy at the top, so it's roadmapmba.com, I actually drew out how, for me, actually, I'll draw it out just because you're on the stream at the moment. So when I started out in business myself, everyone has to know how they're going to make money, but it's really important as well to be able to communicate it. So in terms of money over time, freelancers basically sell their time for money. So people hire them to do stuff. So that is probably what your class is consultancy. A lot of people set up and they just do that, and they're more than happy to just do that. But part of the issue up for me was that you never really make ground. So for instance, you might have 5 customers and they might pay you £1,000 a month each, which is great and you're earning your money. But then if any of them decides, actually, we don't need you anymore, okay, you can find another customer, but you can't really earn more than that. So I wanted, and I was very upfront from the start, was to basically have 2 extra additional revenue streams. The first one was all about investing. So what I do and what people hire me for is that the business skills to help grow companies, because I'm actually quite good at that, was that actually it's taking kind of sweat equity or whichever in businesses that can keep growing whilst I'm doing other things. But actually the consultancy allows me to invest in cameras, live streams, studios, whichever, and the roadmap and my own stock, that this actually enables me to do my other things. And then the other one is in terms of business education, that with the Roadmap MBA, so basically when customers order, they get this pack which gets shipped out around the world. And we've got customers in USA, Nigeria, Latvia, Amsterdam, the UK. And it's how that is my scalable business model, that it's given business education and giving people access to stuff that is, well, cheaper than a lot of other people kind of do. Hopefully better in terms of the interactivity, but that is my scalable business model that this unlocks. But the other important thing just to do with what I do, the fact that people actually hire me to do stuff and hire me to sell on their behalf, means that all of the skills that I talk about, I practice every single day, that actually I'm quite good at them. So almost you're working with someone that's a practitioner that isn't just teaching you theory from a textbook. I actually do it every day. And as soon as I finish these calls, I jump back on client stuff And that again for me is part of my kind of USP, is that this is what I actually do. So hopefully, that might have answered your question. I'm just going to read through. Employ people replication. That's a good point. So a lot of businesses that do what I do, you can employ different people to grow the baseline. There's two reasons why I don't. One is that you can never guarantee for what I do. It's hard to replicate in terms of it's all about your brain power to understand problems, use your reference points from past jobs to then solve problems. That I can't trust how good other people are going to be to do that. So therefore, I don't want to place the risk to take on a client who buys into what we're trying to do and they don't get the service because I can't control what someone else says or does outside the office. But you could train them up, you could just hire better people, which is true. But as part of my own roadmap and what I'm looking to do, the dream is for the business course, and actually the idea that one day I can sit on a beach and sit in Cyprus or sit in America or travel or do all these great things and do the live streams and do the fun stuff, but actually work one day a week. And that's part of the dream of being able to control my own destiny, to build the business that I want, not just a bigger business. Does that make sense? And so just through having a conscious awareness of what I'm trying to build is why I'll probably, never say never, and I record these as well, I'll probably never employ someone just because I want the freedom to be able to adapt and pivot and stuff and grow the scalable side of the business, rather than just do more marketing support or strategy support, whatever. But no, I genuinely appreciate the heads up on the questions. It's all really, really good stuff.